Backyard Green Films is proud to present this episode of Agri-Culture with your host, Alara Bowman. Alara and her husband Rick travel throughout the land in their teardrop trailer that they have nicknamed Maggie, bringing you stories about their travels and the people they meet. They visit farmers, ranchers, and just about anyone who loves putting their hands in the dirt or their feet in stirrups. For the past 3 years, they have been filming a documentary about heritage breed animals entitled The Holstein Dilemma, Heritage Breeds, and the Need for Biodiversity. In those travels, they have gotten to meet some very interesting people. Here's one of those interviews.
Hi, this is Alara. Welcome back to our podcast. In this next episode, we bring you a conversation with 3 of my favorite people. Bill Tall, Sam Tall, and Rebecca Tall Brown are members of a steadily shrinking category in the world these days, owners of a family-run business. City Farmers Nursery was founded in 1972, and it's a business that grew out of a passion. It's still growing, and they're still passionate, as a matter of fact. This family is a classic example of the old saying that if you love what you do, you'll never work another day in your life. I've seen Bill and Sam both covered in dust on a hot day while helping a busy line of customers at the front desk, so I'm sure there's a bit of the work part in there too, but the principle is solid. Rebecca does all of the marketing for the business and she thrives on it, as you'll hear in the podcast. But that just plain seems like work to me, even if you're built for it. I'm very glad someone enjoys the marketing end of things, and it's a really important thing in running a business, but it's definitely not me. A little about the nursery. City Farmers Nursery is located here in San Diego, and as the name implies, they're smack dab in the middle of the 8th largest city in the country. I don't mean the outlying areas either. The nursery is located in City Heights, an area surrounded by 4 of the bigger freeways in San Diego. It's a wonderful stretch of green, nature, bees, butterflies, and agriculture that you'd never expect if you didn't drive right by it and stop to check it out. It's kind of like a combination of a day at the zoo, a trip to the feed store, a stop at a garden shop, lunch at a casual restaurant, and a continuing education class. You might go to pick up 50 pounds of chicken feed and end up by signing up for a zucchini canning class at Bill's house in the big community kitchen area. You might go down on the weekend to investigate the next fruit tree you might want to plant in your yard and end up getting biscuits and gravy at Nate's restaurant on site, staying for the outdoor music, and picking up some native California ornamentals for a drought-tolerant garden. Or you just walk in, pet the dog that's wandering around, say hi to the cat napping on the front counter, go see the goats in the back, try to figure out how the hive parts in the beekeeping section go together, watch the chicks peeping in the big coop, look at the pipes and dream about an aquaponics setup, say hi to the pony, and end up talking to Bill at the front counter, asking him about the best kind of plum you want to plant if you have low chill hours and a little bit of a salt breeze where to live. As Rick is well aware, that's pretty much the definition of a good date in my household, by the way. True to Bill's vision in the very beginning, the nursery is a constantly evolving organism. This is reflected not only in their business model, but also in the roles they play as family members working together. Bill's getting to the point where retirement is on the horizon, or knowing Bill, maybe that just means slowing down to working only 5 days a week. I think it's something he might be looking forward to, but it's a difficult change to make. Sam and Rebecca have established themselves as forces to be reckoned with on their own terms, and are taking a more active role in the running of this business. They have lots of energy and lots of ideas, much like their father. And Bill, Sam, and Rebecca are all in the process of trying to find the level where everyone can be a contributing member and take the time off they want and give a little and work a lot and go to bed wonderfully exhausted but content every night. That shift is not an easy thing to do, and it's happening a lot now in business in general with the rise of the next generation and the approaching retirement of the baby boomer generation. This family has a good chance of making a successful transition, though, in that they're all extremely hardworking. They all have skill sets that are different enough that all parties can shoulder a different part of the load, and they communicate wonderfully well. There's a lot of love in this family and true respect for each other. I hope you enjoy listening to the excerpt of our conversation as much as I did. We sat in the back garden area surrounded by dappled shade, a light breeze through the fruit trees, the sound of wind chimes and bees buzzing on the flowers nearby, the goats eating hay in the background, and all of the other sounds and smells of a little haven of agricultural bliss in the middle of the big city. Please enjoy the conversation with Bill, Sam, and Rebecca of City Farmers Nursery.
My name is Bill Tall, City Farmers Nursery, also known as Farmer Bill. Started when I was 16 years old, and now I have somebody to work it with me.
So hi, my name is Sam Tall, and I guess you can call me, I guess I've kind of worked my way into the farm hand of the nursery. Not really a manager, we have one of those, but I've been here full-time for about 3 years, but I've been here just about my whole life. I grew up here, was raised at the nursery, went to school locally, probably about age 18 to 25. I found a couple other careers. I was in prosthetics, and I wanted to become a firefighter. Learned a lot of really good hand skills with the prosthetics, firefighting, and EMT. I learned a lot about management and structure of how organizations kind of are run and stuff. In high school, I had 2 houses I had maintenances on, so I kind of have some experience with that. But everything I've learned has been here at the nursery.
And then, 2015, you made the best decision of your life,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, so I was on I drove from here down to Guatemala. Halfway through the trip, kind of had some things pop up here at the nursery, and I decided to come back. And I've been here ever since. I've been full-time for about 3 years, a little over 3 years. And like I said, I'm kind of just a hand around here. I help organize, ordering, just about a little bit of everything, which is kind of a nice part about the job. Do you want to talk about the history of the nursery?
Well, yeah, but the fact is that the kids, when they were here, they all helped out because it was not a matter of getting an allowance, it was a matter of putting food on the table. And they picked up a lot of this stuff. When I was a kid, my mom and dad were a big part of my life. My mom did the cooking in the house. She was a stay-at-home mom. And my dad worked a lot, but he also owned a piece of property where we're at now, part of it. And he loved doing woodworking, and he also had a garden, and so did I. And so it was nice that we could spend time doing those things because he worked so much. We didn't have a lot of time to go out and, go to baseball games and things like that. So I would come down here when he had his little business, and his little business was a little market that he sold some day-old bread and some chicken eggs that he had stopped a truck that came by. And he also sold piles of firewood and big piles of steer manure that he would bring in and sell. And I was just helping him. And I remember one of his customers, I used to help load the firewood in his vehicle, and he'd always give me a silver dollar as a tip. And I saved all those, and I thought, this is cool. And my dad had these wads of money, and I thought, this is good. So that was kind of the seed in my mind. And then from my parents, I took on woodworking, gardening, and cooking. Those were my 3 favorite pastimes. And I was going to Madison High School, and my teachers were great. And I spent a lot of time with them because I didn't really social with a lot of people. I didn't go to ball games or dances or anything like that. And I was sitting in the lunch hour where I told them I quit my job. I didn't know what I wanted to do. Well, lucky for me, one was a horticulture teacher. There was an ROP class I was taking, and one was a business teacher. And they looked at me and they said, Bill, why don't you open a nursery? And so I had $200 saved up, and I talked to my dad about using a piece of property down here, got a car, and that's how it got started when I was 16. So the property my dad got was something that he had acquired because he owned some property on Highway 94 and it got eminent domain. So when he bought this, which is in City Heights here, it's at home in Euclid Avenue, it was canyon, and the only building here was the restaurant that's here now. And so he had this place, and after work he'd come down and run his little business or on the weekends, and he slowly filled in the canyon, and the city was very helpful back then. Helped him get permits, laid the pipe so he didn't have to pay for it. And at that time when I started the nursery, the place was pretty filled in, and there's a double-story building out in front there, and that's where the nursery was, just on that footprint alone and all. And over a period of time, it grew, and then when I turned 18, things changed. My dad told me I needed to get a real job. He worked for International Harvester. He said, you'll have benefits, you'll have insurance, you'll have pension, and you'll have job security. And I said, well, how about if I went ahead and enjoyed what I did and do this? And my mom, bless her heart, kept telling him, let Bill do what he wants to do and see how it does. And so he said, okay. But he also told me nothing was for free. And so at that point he says, well, you're gonna have to pay some kind of rent because you're using the property. And as it grew, the rent grew, but you know, he was right. There is nothing that a free ride in the world. And it grew, and I went to Mesa College to get my horticultural degree because I couldn't leave because there was no four-year colleges here. And Mesa was the only horticulture school at the time. Cuyamaca and Southwestern weren't around. And then City College wasn't either, as far as that program goes. And so I got my AS degree going to night school. And I moved out of the house when I was 18, and I bought a travel trailer. It's 15 foot long. And I hooked a hose and an electrical cord up to it, and that's kind of how I lived my life. I had chickens down here from when I bought my first batch of chickens. And so I took a PE class. I wasn't sports minded, but I took a badminton class so I could use the shower at the school. So I didn't have a shower in my trailer and all. And that lasted for many years until I found somebody that would go out with me, and and we went out and we got married, and then I had to move off the property. I had to go rent an apartment. And I'm sitting there going, this is terrible because I'm not paying my dad, I'm paying somebody else. So when I was 18, my dad had always advised me never put money in the bank, always buy property. And the property that we're sitting on now was for sale for $5,000. But it was landlocked, so the only people that could buy it was us. And so I bought it from the guy. He carried the paper, and $75 a month payments were tough. But I managed to pay it off after a bunch of years, and slowly took a small tractor and kind of pushed the dirt from the hill into the canyon and created a pad. And so about a year into our marriage, we decided we could move down here. So I bought a mobile home. And the neat thing about it then was you could go to the city and say, I'm putting a mobile home in, and they would give you all the blueprints to copy so that you could do your own prints and you do your own installation. And that's how that happened. And then over a period of years, we had 3 wonderful kids. And that kind of brings us up to now. I still got 3 wonderful kids.
So I think everyone that comes to the nursery is like, wow, this is such a cool place and it'd be a great place to grow up. I went to school locally here and grew up here, and to me, it's just kind of home. So it's like, this is kind of just what we do. But I remember growing up, we'd have our classes come here on field trips and look at like the nursery and stuff. And I'd just be like, oh, this is just my house. And everyone would love it. And we'd bring at the time we had a pony that we'd walk up to the school and go for carnivals and stuff. On the weekends, have time to play and stuff. But if you ever said you were bored, you were put to work. I have a photo of me when I think I was about 9. I was driving the Bobcat. The rule was once I could touch the pedals, I could drive it. So at that time, I'd help the guys move trees around, like bare root season, helping with that. And then I also remember, I don't know how old I was, but I wanted to have my own little stand, kind of like a lemonade stand. So I went to my dad's like, hey, I want to sell something. And he gave me succulents, which at the time weren't popular. And also the nursery was a little quieter back then. And that lasted for probably about maybe 2 hours. I would get bored and kind of walk away from it. I wish I was young now because everyone wants to buy succulents. I'd probably make a killing being a little kid selling succulents. So I think just growing up here, I learned kind of the way how a nursery should work. Still experience a lot with working with my dad and stuff. What makes us unique, what makes us run. That's kind of what I'm figuring out now, is what keeps this place going, what sets us apart from any other nursery, because we are such a unique place. And that's what I like about it is you walk around the nursery, and right now we're sitting in the bonsai area. Right behind us there's succulents. We have our goat co-op, we do aquaponics and beekeeping. So I think it's really cool because I know enough about everything to get things started, and either we set stuff up here. So I think it's a really great experience, and then everything I've done in my life, even it's other jobs, I think it's all kind of brought me up to where I am now. I'm not in a rush to take the place over. I got plenty of time, but I know kind of looking at the future of some cool ideas, and that's the part about owning a business is you just kind of say, hey, this is kind of what I want to do. I've learned from you that you're just like, it'll work its way out. You have fun doing it, as long as you're having fun. Yeah, that's kind of what it was like to grow up here and what keeps me going.
We asked Sam about his vision of City Farmers Nursery.
Well, it's funny though, because we get people calling, asking if there's like a mission. And I always kind of say, oh, we're a nursery, like we sell plants, like that's what keeps us going. But I think we're more than a nursery. A nursery, you'd think of just plants in pots. In the middle of the city here, kids don't get to see what a cow looks like, where eggs come from, what a peach tree, what an apple tree looks like. Every once in a while when we do tours, we can show them that kind of stuff. So I think we're more than a nursery, and we kind of always strive to be. How do you classify, and like, why did you break off into different things?
Well, when you meet my daughter, her and I have a disease. It's called the brain won't stop. And when something's working, you think of the next thing. And what's nice about that is that you keep an eye on what's happening, you know, what's happening back east, what's happening up north. And you start thinking, this is missing, it's not in town. And so you start coming up with new ideas. And the best thing when you come up with a new idea and you think it through is that you never get a negative on it. You always think it's going to work no matter what. And I've done that. And it'll either work or not, but you don't think about it in the beginning. You think about all the exciting things and new ideas that'll do happen and all. And sometimes you come up with a new idea, you're just before your time. So you don't get rid of it, you just shelf it for a little bit. And so what's exciting about it is the industry we're in is so broad at what you can do. It goes everywhere from the cut flower industry to the, you know, to farming, to cattle raising. The agriculture is huge. And what you could do with that huge industry is bring it down in here, because I think that a nursery is a business, but it also is a love that you can have. And the love is by offering people stuff they cannot get anywhere else. Offering kids to be able to come in and to look at farm animals instead of going all the way out east. You know, going to see animals at the zoo or SeaWorld or something that's very expensive.
So how did you get into all these different types of things? Like for a while you had so many peaches, so yeah.
So what I ended up doing is I ended up seeing what's connected with the nursery. For instance, many years ago, there was no beekeeping society here. So somebody said they would like to start a bee meetup group. I said, bees, that's interesting. So I went, I helped them to get that bee meetup group started, and I said, where do they get their bee supplies? So I went to them and I said, I know nothing about this. What do you guys use for raising bees? And so they gave me this big list. So I went in the catalog and I bought all this stuff. Well, some was pie in the sky. I still have it. You know, like a capping knife and stuff. I still have that stuff. But I started learning. I went to their meetings. I started learning about this. I wanted to know as much as I could, because when you offer an idea or a product to somebody, you need to have the whole, not just part of it. You know, you don't go in and somebody buys a bee box. You have to have the suit. You have all this stuff. And so you have to have it complete. And so everything I've done, you know, in the late 80s, I heard about this thing called hydroponics. I said, what is that? It's the art of growing indoors and controlling your plants. I said, this is really cool stuff. So I was talking to a friend of mine, and he says, yeah, well, you know what people are growing? They're growing pot. And I said, not everybody. And if they buy potting soil at your place, that doesn't mean they're growing vegetables. So I went and I started looking into it. I had a couple companies that invited, actually Sam and I went on a field trip at the company to learn how to repair lights, and they showed me their operations. I went to some demonstration things. And there was one other hydroponics store in San Diego at the time, and we outlasted them. And then we became the only place, and that was crazy, totally crazy business. But sometimes there comes a point where you say, you know, it's too much of it out there. See, my whole idea of being unique is great. Well, I started hydro, and then in the late 90s, everybody was opening hydro stores. And they were competing, and they were price checking. I said, you know, it's time to back out. So I said, what do we have here now? We have hydroponics, and we have plants. You know, we should go into ponds. We should start carrying pond supplies. Did that for a bunch of years, and then the drought came, and it kind of slowed down. But then I thought, you know, you can marry those things, and you can create growing plants with the water from the fish. Well, little I know it was aquaponics, but somebody labeled it, but I already started it, and this was just exciting to me. And my daughter was in, I think, junior high or high school, and she decided to do a hydroponic thing for a science fair. And I said, well, let me help. She goes, no, I'm going to do this on my own. It's my daughter. And so she did it, and she was at Crawford, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Crawford. And she won at Crawford, and she was the first person at Crawford to go to City. She won at City, and she went to State, and she didn't make it, but she was the first at Crawford to be able to do that. And being the first at something is great. You don't have to be the only person. So that's part of the evolution of a business, is getting excited about something new. And Sam has come up with a couple things, you know, and they were too complicated for me, and he took it on. And I think one of them was the composting he came up with.
Yeah, so there's kind of aspects like that. But I think also you look at the regular homeowner, and they kind of start off with like, oh, I'm gonna have a garden. And they come in saying like, oh, you know, my apple tree's only getting so many things. And they look into bees. And so now bees are pollinating. And then you look at all the kind of waste that you're having off of your veggies and stuff. And then you add that to, where do I put that? And you give it to chickens. So I think that's another reason why the nursery's kind of evolved, because everything is connected. Like I said, you got the chickens, you got the aquaponics. If you live on not everyone in an apartment can have a nice garden, but you can do aquaponics. We have quite a few fruit trees that we planted here. A lot of them were ones that the tag fell off. Instead of throwing them away, we plant them, or we planted them so people can see what they turn into. But we get a lot of extra fruit and stuff, so you end up drying it. So in the off season you have that, so that's why we have all the canning supplies. So I think this is all kind of, in a way, it's all connected. And in here in San Diego, I guess any part of the United States, you have people that, hey, they might just be into bonsais. Not everyone wants to have fruit trees, but that's why we have bonsais.
So I'd never really get into anything thinking it's going to make a bunch of money. I just think it's a great idea. And if you think what you're doing is a great idea and you protrude that, people will get interested in it. And I think that we've done that with a lot of stuff. Even when Sam's been here, we've done some changes, done some things that we get excited about it. And we know we need to make money, but your enthusiasm and your love for it is what gets people excited that they want to do it.
I think we're also a very unique situation because we own the property, thank goodness. And but not everything here has to sell right away. So there's some things, there's a lot of fads that kind of come through and get really popular. A lot of stores will get rid of them, but we tend to kind of hold on and keep that area because eventually it all kind of comes back. So I think there is that kind of opportunity to have that. I think that's one of the things that eventually we'll be working on. But you need to have a little bit of that kind of nostalgia here because we really do work with young kids coming out in college. We have San Diego State. We have a lot of kids coming in for that, all the way up to people that are retiring. So you kind of have to have that, that big demographic of stuff to sell to everyone.
It's a broad spectrum.
Yeah.
And sometimes people will come in looking for something that they used to have, and it's here. And they go, or sometimes somebody will come in and said, you know, we've been to this place, and he said, if anybody's going to have it, City Farmers will.
Yeah. And
we do. And so some of this stuff does take up space, and we do have a limit in our space here, not so much that we have to pay per square foot, but so we have to be a little more wiser on it, but things do evolve. I mean, I take it in the 70s, macrame was big. Macrame's coming back, you know? I don't have any leftover macrame, but we brought it back in. So,
yeah.
So I think all that, you know, the hand tools, you know, some people are looking for this, for a scythe and a sickle. Yeah. And I thought it'd be cool to have, and we sell them. And it's just like, not a lot, but it's that uniqueness. It's almost like old hardware stores. You could find a single washer. And then
you can find a single seat here.
That you can find a single seat here. You know, I had an interview with a couple of kids. They were doing a little documentary. It was a high school group, and the kids, one of the little girls sat down with me, and she was asking me questions. The first question came out of her mind is, why should we buy from a business like you? And my answer was so simple, and it came to mind really quick. I said, someday you're not going to have a choice. Someday you're not going to have a choice. Every place you go to is going to be selling the same stuff. We give you that choice and all. And I told her, you look in all the shopping malls, it's the same stuff.
And we do work with about 200 different vendors. Yeah. So we go out and search, like we'll find something. We also have like a sales rep come and say like, hey, this does great at so-and-so nursery or in Home Depot, like you guys should carry it. We're kind of pass on that. We'll keep thinking of it like, oh, hey, we might be able to find something else, but we'd rather find the mom and pop that are making it or the company that's not being kind of shown at other stores, and that's what we end up bringing in. So I think that sets us apart, but you've kind of always talked about always being unique in the first thing kind of thing. So I think that's more kind of prevalent in kind of a business strategy.
And it's not that the product isn't good, it's just that when product becomes available everywhere, it gets watered down. It's not that unique. And you know, now, and this might be another different subject, but now we're finding a lot of our suppliers are retiring. or they're going out of business, or second generation isn't taken over. And so now we've looked at more of carrying stuff that we know we could always carry, which means producing it ourselves.
We just had one this week. Our worm casting guy decided to retire. He just didn't have someone to maintain it, and I think the city came out there and he just got tired and just said, I'm done. So that's always finding at least once a year a supplier is retiring or moving on or something like that. Keeps us on our toes.
That's the next generation situation is that I've had all these old guys I grew up with, and we know them all, and all of a sudden they're not doing it anymore for whatever reason. And sometimes the next generation comes along and say, you know, instead of doing wholesale, we could do retail, make more money, and grow less stuff. And so they change their operations, and which is a cool challenge. Let me tell you, it's like, okay, we could do this.
Then Rebecca Tall Brown joined our conversation. She's truly a natural marketing gal, from birth, I think.
So I'm Rebecca. I'm the oldest of the 3 kids, and I do the marketing and have helped develop the brand. We all grew up working at the nursery. So we grew up living here. We grew up doing all kinds of work. And you would never ever tell my dad you were bored, because he'd have a list as tall as you were. And when you were done with that list, come back because there's another list. And so you learn very quickly to occupy yourself or to find something that you really enjoyed doing. And so I'd say probably about the age of 9 or 10, I started to think, okay, I get that we could rake up the barn, we could go ahead and plant bulbs, we could bag soil, or we did really cool things like we had a newsletter and we had contests. And I started to kind of see the more people who would come in would result in us being able to buy ice cream at the end of the week. And so I was very motivated to be like, how can we get more people in? Because I was excited we could go buy a certain brand of ice cream at the end of the week. And so I really gravitated towards the marketing. But one of the cool things about the marketing, again, I'm probably in 4th or 5th grade at this point, is this was really before digital. So we were able to do literally cut and paste. And then you would cut this clip art out of these magazines and paste it, and you would type up on a typewriter, whatever the message was, whatever the events were, whatever the news was. And we would hand mail it. This was actually before the stamps were adhesive, so you had to lick all the stamps. We would sit down on a Sunday evening, we'd watch a movie, we'd fold the newsletters ourselves, we'd lick it, we'd hand address it, and we'd send it out. But then you'd find people come in, and I found that super rewarding, like even as a really small kid. So I kind of gravitated towards that. I very early on was like, we should have a website. I think my dad was like, what's a website? And we learned that together. And one of the neat things is my dad never said no. He'd ask me to make a case for it, and there was never any budget. But he'd say, okay, but what about this? But what about that? And so it was almost like having to make a case to do something new. And I would say that's still the case today. Is just because I was his kid didn't mean I got any sort of pass. The cool part was there was a ton of autonomy, because nobody really, in my opinion, gets into business to do the marketing. They have to do the marketing, but if there's someone else to take that off your hands, great, go ahead and do it. So I was the one who got to kind of take up that stuff, and from a very early age, we have pumpkin growing contests where we invite kids, we give them pumpkin seeds for free. They would come in, their parents would come in, the kid would get into gardening. That becomes this really lifelong passion for them. And it's fun to see someone become an occasional visitor to a frequent visitor, and that's only grown over time.
Not many people learn their skills at elementary school age at the dining room table.
My dad knew what he wanted to do at 16. So by the time I was 17, I felt behind. I was like, why haven't I figured out what I like to do? But I really love the autonomy of guiding the brand here. And I thought, well, if I can do it here, maybe other companies would pay me to do that. So I went to school for marketing, and I worked with all kinds of different companies, different sizes. But everything I was able to pilot, I piloted at the nursery. So things like starting social media. When we first started Facebook, it was 2000, and I think we had like me, my cousin, and my sister as fans. Now we've got 7,500 fans. And so it's been growing it slowly over time, but using it in a way that's super sustainable, super honest, reflects who the business actually is. And I was able to kind of grow the nursery as my career has grown. So I currently do brand production work. So all of the work that I've learned here has really shaped my full-time job. I have clients all over the map, all over the globe, athletes, large companies, nonprofits, NGOs. that is all stemmed back from my work here, and really my work learning about the work that an individual does to start their business. And I don't know if Dad told you this, but I asked him one time, I said, hey, what would you do if you didn't own a nursery? Because you just associate him with the nursery. And he says, well, one of two things. He said, I'd either be a rabbi or I'd be a bartender. And I was like, well, those are odd things. And why did you pick those things?
Because you can help people. You know, I think all my kids, we have this inner feeling of helping people. And a couple cute things, as Rebecca was talking about her history, was I remember when she was 16, she did come up to me. She goes, Dad, I'm confused. I don't know what to do. I said, you're 16. And her answer was, well, you knew what you wanted to do. And I turned to her, I said, I'm weird. Nobody knows what they want to do at 16. And then she was at San Diego State, and she had a couple internships. And she turned to me, she goes, I don't know what to do when I graduate. I get these two people who want me to work for them. And I said, well, why don't you start your own business? And this is
Stitched them together into 40-hour-a-week job, and was able to grow and learn and do and keep an overhead that's very low. That's something that Dad has taught me. You keep your overhead low so that way you have the freedom to do what's right, to do what makes you happy, and to ultimately do things that make other people happy.
Also, you're covered when times are hard.
Yeah.
I know there was times, like even before hydro, we had to go to Grandma and Grandpa's for food and stuff, and we spent the night quite often. It wasn't what you saw here, but you never had to lay anyone else off. They always
Because
got
of
paid
financial
before
reasons,
us.
yeah.
a lot of times we would do that. We'd go to the bank and borrow money to pay payroll through the holidays so they wouldn't get shortchanged, and knowing that spring we'd be able to pay it back. And it's kind of interesting that there were tough times, but we didn't make them tough. We just kind of hunkered down and made it through.
Yeah.
You know, and it's something that took a long time to get this way, and it kind of one of the most interesting things is probably about maybe 5-10 years ago, nursery finally got a savings account. Never had one.
And this, I just want to put it in perspective. This is 35 years into owning a business.
Right.
35 years before you have savings.
Yep. Had a checking account, money went in and out, but nothing in a savings account.
She not only increased the family business, but was able to make a business of her own out of the skill set she learned.
I truly associated work with joy. I could not wait to grow up. I was like, God, somebody give me a car, somebody give me a checking account. I got a checking account when I was 10 years old. I could not wait to be grown up because I saw somebody who got up every morning at 5 o'clock, could not wait to make their mark on the world. And when he said if he didn't run a nursery, he'd either be a rabbi or bartender, it's because there's ministry work to be done here, non-denominational, but you minister to people. Whether you are doing farming or having a customer come in who wants to, it's not about them growing the thing, it's about the reward they get. So I couldn't wait to work. It just was a question of what kind of work there is. And I think all of us have learned that the hard work it's for other people, but there's nothing, we all say this, there's nothing better than your head hitting the pillow at night, having accomplishments under your belt, being completely beat, and you're like, man, today was a good day.
And then you wake up at 6 and you're like,
we get to do it again.
Let's do it again.
Yeah.
That sun comes out, I'm ready to go to work.
Yeah.
It's a waste of time.
7 o'clock in the afternoon is what he used to call it. If you slept in, it's 7 o'clock in the afternoon. What are you doing? Get on up.
I also think that this line of work is you got to be raised in it. I don't know of anyone that we could have step in and run a place like this. You're never gonna get rich. You always say you got to sell your property to get rich, which we're not planning on doing that.
Well, there's an old nurseryman that told me that.
Yeah.
Years ago, he says, Bill, you never get rich running a nursery, but your richness will be in your work and the joy that you have.
Yeah. And so,
Then you'll get it when you sell your property, but that's not going to happen.
yeah.
And I'll add that there's a way to communicate that to your audience. My work with this business has been taking his unique thumbprint and just bringing it honestly to the world. So on our website, you'll see down by the phone, it says phone number at the bottom of the website, and it says the old farmer still answers the phone by hand. So you're gonna get the busy signal when we're busy. We really love you to come on down.
Yeah.
And just letting them, because if they're upset with a busy signal, they're not going to like the fact that you're going to wait in line. So we're just letting them know gently kind of how it goes here. When we take pictures, I make sure if we take pictures of the chickens, you're going to see some chicken poop in the barn. This isn't a sterile place, and it's really important to set the expectation. So when they do find you on Yelp, when they do search and see you in a magazine or a newspaper, yeah, they see the sites and they see the really cool gems that you have, but when they come here, they know they're not supposed to wear their really fancy shoes. And a lot of that has been my work of managing the pre-engagement and the post-engagement. So someone will come into the nursery, have that experience. What does it look like afterwards? How do we stay in touch? What does it look like before they get here? How do we ask people to tell their friends without being annoying? And the cool part is that I've seen change over the last 8 years is now you've got customers who really are your biggest brand advocates, your biggest champions. They can't wait to tag their friend in Instagram. You guys have to come with us next time. Hey, my neighbors are new here. Guys, this is the place I've been telling you about. And it's only because there's a great product and a great service here that's even an option. People who try, and I see this all the time in my line of work, who try to fake the funk, who think, great, we'll get people in and then we'll build the thing. You have to build the thing first, and then you've got endless ways to market it. It has to be the tactics and channels that make sense, and we've tested all kinds of stuff that didn't work. And one of the best gifts you've given me is that go try stuff. I mean, we've tried video things, and then we've realized, okay, we've got to get someone else in to do video. We've tried capturing all the information and been like, okay, time out. It doesn't actually apply because everyone's soil is different. So we've got to kind of edit that a little bit. We've tried, and that's part of it as well, is knowing that, I mean, you're going to bomb out on a bunch of things, but it's not overspending. It's just
I think
testing.
things that we bomb on, we don't walk away from. I don't think there's anything that we've walked away. It's, hey, let's change it to this. When we have something that's broken at the nursery or it's not really working well, we don't get rid of it. We're like, hey, let's just move this around. Let's do that. That's what you'll see at the nursery, is how everything kind of fits in. That's 45 years of kind of puzzling everything together. I think the biggest challenge we have is space. I'm huge on what we don't have enough. Yeah, you see our parking lot and stuff.
It's our kryptonite.
Our discussion, Sam and I'll say, let's get this product in.
Where's
Well,
it
you
gonna
find
go?
where you're going to put it.
Yeah.
We'll find a spot.
And
so we
find a spot. Yeah,
we do.
But yeah, I think just seeing the puzzle, and people walk through and say, man, you guys have been here a while. And because they'll see how everything's set up. It's not, you see inside our shop, it's not sterile shelves, because that's not who we are. And it's kind of neat to have that. We do what we want. Yeah, kind of thing.
The ability to spend time with a customer and not sell them anything. I mean, they could come in and they don't really need it and all. And yes, they could buy it if they want, or to give them advice on knowing what's going on. One thing we can't do is we can't guarantee our plants, because places that guarantee their plants, they get reimbursed by the supplier, and we just don't have that happen. But having them leave with knowledge, and it could be redundant, they already know it, but I like giving them that knowledge even though they already know it, because that way they see that we really care about how they plant the plant and how it grows. And we do a lot of things as far as people having problems with plants. People will come in with problems and we'll try to analyze them. If we don't know, we'll find out. And that's where a lot of my education's been. I only had an AS degree at Mesa College, didn't teach me everything, but finding out a problem instead of saying, I don't know. Or if we don't have something they're looking for it, finding a place they can go find it and giving them that lead, because it's important. And each one of the nurseries in San Diego have their unique part. And this is one of the best fields to be in, because we're comrades. We're not out to get each other, because there's not a lot of us left.
We're a family business. We've been in business for 45 years. My siblings and I were raised at the business, and I'm in charge of the marketing. We have an amazing community who is as much a part of the business as we are, and we really enjoy being able to share the love of being able to live in this beautiful city of San Diego and to grow almost anything at many, many parts of the year, and making gardening really accessible and making it really fun.
And also here at City Farmers Nursery, everything that we do here you can do in your backyard. We don't go huge scale on anything. We do it so we can show you that, hey, you don't need to go out and buy everything new. You can get used stuff. We're really big on going into a goal of zero waste at some point. but taking all those things and doing it so you can see that, hey, we can do this in our backyard.
So we're City Farmers Nursery. We're located in City Heights and Home and Euclid Avenue, right next to a great little restaurant called Nate's Garden Grill. What do we specialize in? We specialize in giving you the right information, trying to keep everything in a natural way in organics. We try to specialize in teaching you the joy of gardening, not just from planting plants, but from the enjoyment of it. And also we're trying to portray that what your grandparents and great-grandparents did, you can do now, and you can pass it on to your kids so that they have the enjoyment of it. Whether it be raising chickens or whether it be planting vegetables or even roses in your yard. It's the joy not only of the plant, but of the process of planting it.
If you liked our podcast, please subscribe. This is how we keep going. And please tell your friends to join us. Please feel free to post any questions or comments that you might have to our social media sites. Our Twitter feed is at Backyard Green Films, spelled BKYRDGREENFILMS. Our Instagram is at Backyard Green Films, BACKYARDGREENFILMS. Our Facebook is Backyard Green Films. Our YouTube URL is youtube.com/backyardgreentv.
We want to thank Bill, Sam, and Rebecca of City Farmers Nursery for allowing us to visit today. If you'd like more information about City Farmers Nursery, please visit cityfarmersnursery.com. You can also follow them on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You have been listening to Agri-Culture with your host, Alara Bowman. Please tune in for more upcoming episodes from our travels. We'd also like to thank our producer, Michelle Council. I'm Rick Bowman, your behind-the-scenes editor. Until next time. This has been a presentation of Backyard Green Films Productions, all rights reserved, copyright 2019.